Okay, apologies again for the for the late start. But we will begin with Mr. McGill, Andrew McGill, reviewing the agenda, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight's agenda, we have the consideration of the adoption of a resolution that's required for the submission of a GROW grant application for a sewer rehabilitation project and replacement project in Begg-Snyder Park. Commission received information about that at the last discussion session. We also have the administrative approval of a sanitary sewer overflow elimination plan for the Rockwood SSO and approval of a letter of submission of support to Scott Township related to the Scott Township sanitary sewer overflow elimination plan. Again, heard about both of those at the last discussion session. We also have the consideration of the award of a contract to provide professional services related to deer management. We have the consideration to purchase one police administration vehicle. We'll give you some background on that during discussion session, and note on that agenda item, there are 3 different options for the commission to consider.
Right.
Just pick one of those. Otherwise, we're going to be over budget and I have to explain to the finance director how that happens. And finally, we have an appointment to the Resiliency Board.
Great, thank you. So first up is recreation. Mr. Donnellan. Our new tennis guy. Welcome.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Hello.
you. Welcome to Mount Lebanon.
Thank you.
Glad to have
Good
you.
be here.
I've heard great things are going on at the tennis center.
Yes.
Well, that's right. So good evening and thank you for this opportunity to update you on the tennis center. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our new tennis and racket center manager, Darren Rosso. Darren started with us just prior to opening May 1st at the tennis center. So he's had about 2 months total in, and it's really remarkable. It's actually hard to believe it's only been 2 months because Darren has hit the ground running. He's working with all the people at the tennis center. He's been doing a really great job and we're both very, very excited about what's happening at the tennis center and where we're headed. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darren. He has a presentation for you. I'll share my screen and he can tell you what's happening at tennis. Let me get the right slide here. Alrighty. What when you say?
Okay, all right. Thanks, everyone. Great to be here. As David said, my name is Darren Rosso. I am the new tennis racket center manager. About 2 months now on the job, and it's been fun. It's been a lot of work, but it's been good. Beautiful facility. Really happy to be back in the Pittsburgh area, and I'll get to that shortly. But I'll give a kind of a background of my information so you're all familiar with me, and then we'll kind of get into the tennis and racket center of Mount Lebanon. So originally from the Pittsburgh area, I grew up about an hour and a half east of here in Homer City, went to Homer Center High School, and then went to IUP for my undergrad and graduate degree in sport management from there. Knew I kind of wanted to work in tennis and make that my career path. Wasn't good enough to be a teaching pro, so I knew I had to kind of follow the management path if I wanted to stay in it. So that's what I did. So after college, moved out to Seattle, Washington, and accepted a job at the University of Washington, managing what's called Nordstrom Tennis Center, 6 indoor court facility, Division I men's and women's programs, hosted a lot of great events there. Was there for a little over 4 years. COVID hit, so I moved over to what's called Central Park Tennis Club, which is a private member-owned tennis club, no affiliation to the park in New York City, just in Kirkland, Washington, about 20 minutes east of the city of Seattle. So I was the assistant manager for about 1.5 years and then got promoted to club manager. I did both of those for about 1.5 years, and my fiance and I found out we're expecting our first child in September. So we kind of decided that it's time to start looking at options, at least back on the East Coast. Pittsburgh would be ideal, but as long as we could drive home on a weekend, that was the goal. And eventually this job popped up, kind of perfect timing for both of us, and eventually worked out. And now I'm here and 2 months in. So just a little bit of background. This is a picture of Nordstrom Tennis Center at the University of Washington. We hosted what's called the National Indoors, which is the top 16 teams in the country play their men's and women's, which was a lot of fun to host each year. But basic, it was for the Division I men's and women's programs or whatever we had. Other than that, we rented out to faculty, staff, student, university personnel, and we did programming and tournaments and events and things like that. So that was a really fun opportunity. And then moved over to Central Park Tennis Club in Kirkland, Washington. 18 court facility, 12 indoor courts, 6 outdoor, with Seattle's weather kind of like ours. Indoor courts are a necessity, so a lot of indoor facilities in the city of Seattle. We did a $2.5 million renovation project on all of those outdoor courts there. They were all asphalt courts, which were cracking and had a lot of issues with water coming up through. The center court area there was failing. We had failing retaining walls. So went through about a 2-year project to revamp that whole space and make them post-tension concrete courts, which basically tension rods in the concrete. They pour it, about 3 days later, they tension them all, and it's supposed to stop the concrete from cracking as much. So all new landscaping, new walkways, new fencing, new backdrops, cabanas, bottle fillers. They did the whole 9 yards. So that was a really fun project to be a part of. And that's me and my, no, that's
Hope I
perfect.
didn't jump too quick.
That's perfect. That's my fiance Caitlin, and we have 2 Bernie Doodle dogs, Benny and Archie, and a baby girl on the way in September. So that brings us now to here. So I kind of wanted to focus on 4 different areas of the Tennis and Racket Center. I'll touch on all of these here shortly. Kind of the main things that we're working on, kind of what we've done so far, what we're planning to do in the future, and the indoor bubble season as well. So going into facility improvements, David and I kind of had a similar vision that we really wanted to clean up Cedar Boulevard. Obviously, it's the first impression you get of the tennis center when you're driving past. Obviously, a ton of traffic on that road, as well as people, walking their dogs, walking their kids. Just a ton of people on that street. So wanted to clean it up from the bubble season. There's a lot of remnants that you need to clean up. So we made that a priority. There's a main flower bed right when you walk into the tennis center that needed a lot of help. So we replanted that with some new black mulch and new plants. We have updated sheds on Cedar Boulevard and a new updated brand new gazebo, which looks really nice. Right now we're going through the project of updating our courts 5 and 6, basically tearing them up, new underground watering system, new drainage, 2 brand new hardwood courts. I took a picture today and yep, that's what it looks like this morning. So digging it up. Nothing crazy found so far. Everything's been pretty smooth. So it's been happy with the project and the crew working down there. So that's what it looks like now. And they're kind of taking all the dirt and rubble out of there and hoping to lay hard shoe very soon. Above the tennis center, we have a hitting wall. There's a hitting wall on both sides. This is what it looked like before. The indoor tennis, the contractor that ran the indoor bubbles, in the winter time, purchased a brand new hitting wall for us, which looks like this now. So completely state of the art, both sides, new tennis court lines. There's netting above to catch the balls, which is really nice. This is what it looks like from the back. 2 new benches, tennis court lines, new retaining wall, brand new landscaping. Gets a ton of use. I'm always hearing balls bounce back there, which is a great thing. A lot of reservations for the hitting wall. People just love going up there and hitting tennis balls off of it. So that was a huge upgrade to the tennis center. Future, what we're looking at down the road. I'm not sure if all of you have been in the tennis center, but upstairs, there's the founder's room, which is that room in the picture. And then also we have a very nice deck space that kind of overlooks all of the courts. 2 really great spaces that are underutilized right now in terms of what we can do when we host socials and events and mixers and bring in the tennis community upstairs to that area. And really it just needs, some updated furniture on both sides in the founder's room and on the deck space. Really whenever we have league matches and we host our different events that, we can have food up there and the tennis players can go up there and socialize and just have a nice meeting space. Whereas right now we have kind of 2 benches down by the tennis center that they're kind of, have bringing food and socializing there. But if we can really revitalize the space upstairs, I think it's a really nice space in the future. Just needs a little bit of work. So we're going to work on doing that. Also painting the interior and the exterior of the tennis center. All of that needs updated. We have some rusting going on the railings and the exterior of the front side of the tennis center. So we're looking to do that in the near future. We've been working a lot with updating the landscaping. We really completely revamped around court 7 and 8. And then we put all new black mulch in front of the tennis center and working on the new plants. So we've made that a priority to make it really nice. Fencing is old. It definitely needs some work, some repairs, some paint. It's been, maybe 20, 30 years of fence, and it's handling those winters is tough. So it needs to take a look in the next couple of years. Court lighting replacement on our courts 1 through 8. Products are going out, becoming more obsolete because the lights are older. We have really nice lights on courts 13 and 14, which we look to go to for courts 1 through 8. So we're looking to do that. And then our wheelchair lift is currently needing service and needing replaced inside the tennis center to get you up to the founder's room, so.
Yeah, and that project is funded this year, so we're close
The
to,
wheelchair.
yeah, that lift is close to, getting an agreement and getting that going. So I'm working with a provider.
And then programming is kind of the next step. We need to kind of revamp and revitalize the tennis program we offer to the Mount Lebanon community. Doing more events, doing more adult junior clinics, bringing a junior high performance group back where the varsity age kids can play and look to become college players. Different tournaments, definitely bring back the pro tournament next year if we can. And then, events, socials next year is get the community having fun, playing tennis. That's the main goal, getting our courts utilized. There's been discussions of potentially in the future, talking about bringing in a head tennis professional to kind of oversee that part of it, in specific with the programming, and me, David, and that person working together, to kind of revitalize and bring new pros on and train the pros that we do have. So we're working on, we just want to be the premier facility around the Pittsburgh area for anyone who wants tennis instruction. So we're working to accomplish that goal. Maintenance and grounds, if you're familiar with the hard shoe surface, it takes a lot of maintenance, obviously way more maintenance than a hard court. You need to constantly brush, line, and water it, and it takes a balance to do that. You don't want it to be too wet or too dry, or it just plays a lot different. So it takes a lot of that, and we have a great crew. Jason Weber, our new full-time maintenance superintendent, has been doing just a fantastic job of taking care of the courts, along with his part-time maintenance staff, of making sure the courts are really private club material. I mean, he's working long days, especially when we first started opening, to make sure the courts are playable, opening up. And, our schedule is basically we have a part-time maintenance crew at night that gets the courts ready for the next morning. And then midday, when the courts are kind of slower around 2 to 3, we'll go out there and brush and line and water them if we need, so they're ready for the evening play. And that seemed to be a good balance that we found working out. We've got a lot of compliments so far since we opened about how nice the courts are and how well they've been playing. And a lot of that's courtesy to Jason. So he's been doing a fantastic job. Pickleball is the hot topic. When I was at Central Park, private member owned, we eventually brought pickleball to that club, which was a lot of work, but pickleball, it is what it is. I'm a big proponent for it. I think it's a great complement to the sport of tennis. I think they both can kind of coexist if you do it right. It's the fastest growing sport in the US. Pickleball was actually invented in Seattle, so it's really popular out there, really popular here, really just around the whole US. It grows by 10% each year. There's a big community in Pittsburgh. I think I just saw they're building a new 15-court indoor facility in Homewood. So it's here, and to have all 3 in one location at Mount Lebanon with platform tennis as well would be really amazing. So we're looking to talk about that in the near future. And then indoor tennis, that's going to be here before we know it. Taking over the year-round operations. David and I are working with the indoor tennis clientele who ran it last year to kind of go over all the operations with the maintenance and subscribers and the scheduling of the vendor lists, and just making sure we're fully prepared for everything that's going to entail with indoor tennis. And Jason, our maintenance superintendent, he worked with indoor tennis in previous years, so that's going to be a huge help. But any and all information and they've been super cooperative in working with us to give us all the information they have for the indoor bubble season. So those talks have already started. That's basically everything. Be happy to take any questions you may have. Jason and I and David, we've been working really hard, and if you've been in the tennis center before and you come in now, I think you'll see a huge difference already. So it's been fun.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Really good.
Terrific. I've heard great things.
And
And I listened to the podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Just want you to
Yes,
know.
thank you.
Good to know about it.
he's in the magazine.
I know.
It's probably arriving at your homes if it hasn't
Right,
already.
it's there.
I mean, I just, in conclusion, I would just like to say that we've been working very closely with indoor. And so far, I think everything that we had tried to accomplish, we're accomplishing. I think people are happy, we're headed in the right direction. I mean, it's really exciting to see what we can do with tennis. So
Great.
great job for Darren and his
I have
staff.
one question.
Oh, no, go ahead. And
Sorry.
then Andrew.
So you worked at a facility that had pickleball
Mhm.
before. Any concerns, issues from tennis players about the noise or any of the other?
Yeah, it's mainly the noise and the kind of cadence of a pickleball next to a tennis court. The tennis players don't like hearing the cadence because it's much faster and it's louder, so it throws off their tennis game. So at the club, I mean, it was member owned, so there, there was a board and there was a whole process to go to a member vote. And then, we went through the whole process for it and we put it on the basic back court. You can fit 4 pickleball courts on 1 tennis court. We put it on the way far one to try to mitigate as much as possible. There was a lot of members who didn't want it at first. After we rolled it out after a year, no complaints. They just get used to it.
Thank you.
Couple things. One, I love that you're focused on upgrading the facility. What is your involvement at this point or planned on going forward with the main park master plan? Because that's obviously.
Yeah.
I'll jump in on
Yeah.
that one. I mean, I think we need to see the final recommendations. I mean, as you know, I was involved in that process. There were certain things that, the consultants came out with at first that we thought, we were just flatly opposed to that. If we put in pickleball, for example, we're gonna lose 2 tennis courts. We don't wanna, take away more tennis courts right out of the gate for something in like parking.
Mhm.
And I think, that was kind of the commission's direction as well. I think we agree that pickleball, we want it on courts 1 and 2. I think if we want more at that point, that's something we have to evaluate. Other than that, I mean, I think because I was directly involved in that process, I think we're pretty comfortable with that. There's other things we need to kind of work out, like with, platform, like are we adding,
Yes,
where do they go?
right.
So those are decisions that have to be made, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping in for Darren only because he wasn't here when this process was getting hashed
No,
out.
exactly. Well, and I think that's I see a lot of great vision in that presentation, right? And so the question in my mind is, right, how do we make sure that we're setting the right stage? With
Right.
this current plan, because one thing that, and looking at the planters out front, and I agree, right, that stretch needs some upgrades. But as part of the conversations we were having about the Salem Cedar intersection, one of the conversations that was happening was, how do we think about Cedar in front of the main park in general? What is the experience we want drivers and people who are parking and pedestrians to have in that space as well? I know we're talking about the rec center, I get it, but there's an overall experience that we need to be thinking about, and I don't want to curtail the vision. I want to be as ambitious as we can, recognizing that we might have to curtail later.
Right,
But you've got a brand new person who's got some great vision, clearly.
sure.
How do we make sure that we're not missing something in this process?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my impression of the plan is that we can pick and choose some of the things, and I don't see that negatively impacting what we're trying to do at the tennis center. What Darren and I have discussed in the 2 months we've been together, we seem to be pretty in sync on what we're looking for the tennis center. Darren amazes me with new ideas though, so that's a possibility. I don't know, maybe Ian could chime in, could we have a sit down with the consultants and Darren before we print this thing?
Yes,
I think that would be a good idea. And listen, like 2 months, Darren's drinking from a fire hose. I mean, we're throwing everything at him. He's taking it wonderfully. But the master plan was not what we needed to get done first. We
Right,
needed him
sure.
to get
Yeah.
tennis up and running. So, but I mean, I think he would welcome that. I would welcome that if it's still a possibility.
It
So
is.
we can try to make that happen.
Ian committed.
Okay, good.
And I expressed concern early on that some of the paddle tennis requests didn't even seem to have been looked at by the consultant, and I wanted to make sure that whether they're good or bad, I can't judge, because I've never played tennis. I'm a swimmer, tennis. So, but I wanted to make sure those all were at least thought through.
Yeah, definitely. And that was,
Good.
platform tennis was
Yeah.
part of the conversation
Yes.
with them. So I know they're aware. So, yeah, I
Good.
think it would be great to have Darren's eyes and input on that.
Great. Okay, Well, I hate to rush everybody, but we better move to the swim center because time is of the essence, as they say.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Nice to have you on board.
Yes, great to be here. Thank you.
Shall I
Yep.
begin? Okay. So, next up, we're gonna talk about the filtration issues at the swim center. Just to recap briefly, we are having problems at the swimming pool with water clarity. When the pool becomes, so cloudy that lifeguards can't see the bottom of the pool, we're required to close. It's a safety issue. This is not a new problem. We've had issues with cloudy water since the pool was renovated in 2014. Once we reach a high volume of bathers, turbidity increases. And eventually, if it continues, you can't see the bottom of the pool. Since I sent the commission the memo on June 14th, we closed the pool early for one additional day on Saturday, June 22nd at approximately 6:30 p.m. We've implemented a few things to try to alleviate the issue. We recently worked out a schedule change with the Aqua Club. They're gonna move masters from Wednesday to Friday morning. This opens up a Wednesday morning for us to vacuum when the pool is undisturbed. So that's a good thing. We've implemented some short adult swims and safety breaks on the hour as needed while we're open on crowded days. This gives filters a chance to catch up. It allows guards to better evaluate the water, and it gives kids a break and a chance to rest. So I think those things, for those reasons, that's helpful. Those are really more stopgap measures. We did propose some larger solutions in the memo. A short-term solution is limiting attendance. I think probably there's various ways to do it. Let me just say that. I'm sure there'll be different opinions on how that should be implemented. But I think the best way to do that would be to restrict attendance to residents and pass holders up to a limit. My recommendation is starting at 800 and adjusting that as needed. Just for reference, in 2023, for the entire season, we had 14 days with 800 or more swimmers. By comparison, in 2024, we've already had 10 days in excess of 800 swimmers. It's not a magic number, it's an estimate based on experience and what I've observed. We've been able to stay open with more than 800. We've been able to stay open for the full day with more than 1,000. There's many things that influence water quality, clarity, and the filter run. All I can tell you is, the common denominator here is more people equals dirtier filter equals cloudy water. So the long-term solution here is we need better filtration. During last week's streak of 90-degree weather, we had to backwash our filters every day for 8 days straight. Anyone who knows swimming pools will tell you that's totally an unacceptable filter run. A filter, generally should run 2 to 3 or more weeks, depending on usage. 24 hours is unmanageable. So something needs to be done. The time to do this, should the commission desire to consider a project like that, would be starting in September and finishing in April so that we don't impact the swimming season. If we did that this September, we could be ready with new filtration and, no restrictions on usage other than our occupancy, which we're required, not to exceed.
What is the occupancy? Not
Roughly
to-
1,500.
Thank you.
That's established by Pennsylvania based on a formula.
Sure.
So, that's really the issue in a nutshell. So I'd just like to open it up for questions at that point.
I do have a few questions. You mentioned we backwash the filter every day for 8 days straight. You mentioned it should be more like 2 to 3 weeks without filtering, is that?
Without a filter change, yes,
without
that
filtering?
would be what I would expect. Two weeks, depending on attendance.
Right,
I mean, because that's really dirt.
yeah. So have we looked into things that we can do to minimize dirt in the pool?
Yes.
And what were some of those things?
Well, one of the things we can control is vacuuming. We try to vacuum as much as possible. We have automatic vacuums that run overnight, unsupervised, and then we have manual vacuuming. This year, we've experienced problems with our automatic vacuums working properly. We've had our pool service company out to look at the unit, to observe it, to program it. His conclusion is that it's getting hung up on the hills and valleys that are created by expansion and contraction in our swimming pool. They're very unusual. There's only one other aluminum swimming pool in PA that I'm aware of, or at least was in the last 17 years. I don't even know if it's still there. It's not a great choice for the floor of a swimming pool.
Do they make other types of equipment that work on those types of floors?
You mean, oh, like a different type of vacuum? Well, manual vacuum will work. And by the way, no matter what automatic vacuum you have, there is no substitute for a manual vacuum. You still need to do it. And the problem there is usage. With this new arrangement with the Aqua Club, we have 2 days where we can vacuum under ideal conditions, and that's Wednesdays
Everybody's
and
in it.
Sundays. It's not great. If we had 2 automatic vacuums that worked, it would probably be satisfactory. But that's something you would have to observe. I mean, there's just too many variables. But we've managed in the past, and I suspect we could manage in the future.
So I've heard complaints that the automatic vacuums that literally go in and don't move from where they start, or they run for 5 minutes instead of a 5-hour cycle.
We're aware.
So how do we, I would assume that we have maintenance contracts, like how do we reconcile that?
There's not a maintenance contract for that. The pool is really almost completely maintained by the aquatic staff and our maintenance staff. We use B&R pools for certain things like winterizing. And troubleshooting, repairs, things like that. If there were a broken vacuum, we would send it back, things like that. But they've come out, they've tested the equipment. Their conclusion is it's getting stuck on these irregularities in the bottom of the pool.
Have we had anyone who's tried to verify that, that's, watched the?
We're on site with them,
the
yeah.
equipment?
Tim and I both were there with them when they looked at it. Yep.
Right.
I can feel it when I walk on it. Because I use the pool.
David, in off-season, we've had someone come out and try to
Fix that.
fix some of
Yeah.
those undulations that are in the pool.
Yeah. Yeah, several times over, my tenure here, every maybe 3 to 5 years, you have to bring a contractor out, do very large cuts and weld flat. Almost every year, we have to have small repairs, also due to expansion and contraction. The pool floor tears. Might be a 1 or 2 or 3 inch
Sure.
fissure in the pool shell that would leak all summer if we didn't do something about it. Our local welder can do that and handle that. Aluminum is somewhat of there's limited numbers of people who can do that, and on a large scale, we found no one other than the builder of the pool, Chester Pools, who's capable and willing to do it. So we have them lined up for the fall to come out and inspect and assess, and then hopefully follow that in the spring with a major repair.
If you were gonna replace it, what material, I just am curious about the material. I don't,
Well, frankly,
What's the state of the art these days?
there's different kinds of pools, but you know, concrete is a very safe bet. I mean, unfortunately, in 2007, we decided not to build a new pool. We decided to renovate in 2014, so you know, with limited funds, while it's a beautiful pool and we made some major upgrades and improvements, a new pool floor other than the zero depth entry area, leisure area. We left the original aluminum in place. We did cut and weld at that time. And had a flat pool starting in 14. And flat is a relative thing. This is a thin plate
I
aluminum,
can feel it.
maybe it's like
You can step on it.
3/16 roughly of an inch, and when you spread that out over something that's, you know, 50 meters by 25 yards, it moves a lot. So it's not a great choice for a swimming pool bottom.
So if the robotic vacuums can't handle it and we do manual cleaning, is the manual cleaning enough? Because I hear complaints from swimmers, club members, some who are sitting here, from coaches of the teams, from my own family who's at the pool 6 days a week at 6 a.m. You know, it's like, what else can we do? So that's just cleanliness of the actual water, right? So
Yeah.
like, is it physically possible for the staff that we have to clean the water manually?
If we could vacuum 7 days a week manually, the pool would be clean.
And why can't we?
Because there's too much activity in the pool. We start at 5:15 in the morning with masters, 4 to 5 days a week, 4 days a week. And sometimes we're going till 9:15 at night with other activities. Again, I just want to emphasize, vacuuming, when done correctly, is done first thing in the morning when no other activity has disturbed the water.
Okay, that's what I'm gonna ask, like, why can't we do it at the end of the day?
Well, and another reason you can't do it at the end of the day, well, you can, but you can't see the bottom of the pool well enough. Plus, if you're backwashing every night or every other night, those people are inside backwashing filters at night.
Okay.
We need to do it in the morning when we can see, when the water is still, and we can do a good job. That's when it really should happen. In a perfect world, our automatic vacuums would fill in the gaps.
Well, it sounds like we need to limit the, where they go.
And it's at least for this year, but yeah, I think we have to think about, is the filtration system undersized, in your opinion? I mean, I don't really know enough about it, so I could be using the terms wrong.
Practically speaking, yes. Did it meet the code? And did we get what the designer designed? On paper, yes, we did. But it is incapable of handling larger bather loads. It's really, even when we get into moderate bather loads, you can see the water getting cloudy. A DE filter is the finest form of filtration for swimming pools that there is, meaning it can filter out the smallest particles. There is no reason other than, well, there's reasons, but in our circumstance, there's no reason why that water shouldn't sparkle all day. DE is great filtration. But with these circumstances, it's not getting the job done. We control what we can control, which means we vacuum, we maintain proper water chemistry, and we backwash properly when required. There's not much else we can do here. Restricting attendance, increasing vacuuming, those are a couple things we could do. The real solution is better filtration.
Yeah, better system.
In terms of restricting swimmers, you mentioned starting at 800 and adjust as needed. What does that look like? How does that work practically? When would that happen?
Well, the software admits and counts admittances. So we know exactly how many people have come through the gate. And it does, in this circumstance, it doesn't matter if they leave, the damage is done. So we can monitor how many people have come through the gate. We'll also monitor water clarity. I think we can make some judgments, you know, if it's 5 PM and you haven't hit your target and your water still looks good, you're probably gonna be fine for the rest of the day. So you don't need to enforce anything other than what comes through the gate at that point. So that's kind of what it would look like. I mean, if it's pass holders and residents, we would have to, pass holders are easy to verify. That's how they are admitted to the pool currently. It would be no different. Residency would be a little trickier. If you've been on the commission long and sat through budget discussions, you've heard me say that I'm not in favor of different rates for drop-in day pass situations because verifying residency will slow down your line. But, you know, desperate times. So what we would do is ask people to bring ID. And then we would give our staff instructions on how to deal with it if they don't have ID. Give me your address. We have a list, like a PDF file of all resident addresses in Mount Lebanon. We also have the county real estate site. I mean, it's kind of slow things down, but we need to do, I think, a reasonable job in fairness to our residents to make sure we know who we're admitting to the pool.
How many pass holders do we have?
I don't know the answer to that today. I could look it up for you, but I don't.
I'm
know.
one.
That was my question, just if we, do we have the potential to turn away a pass holder?
Yeah, you would have that potential if you allow day passes, absolutely. If 700 day pass holders show up at noon, we would absolutely be displacing pass holders, yeah.
So like that's what I'm asking about. How does this practically work, right? So like Ann shows up at the pool and she's the 801st person. What happens? What do we do?
So if we would have to not admit if that's our number. You know, I mean, like I said, we can interpret what we're looking at.
She's gonna throw a waiter out, she's gonna try to, bully. You know who I am.
Commission badge.
No special treatment.
Like, this is a question for Phil too. I mean,
Yeah,
how do we,
it's true.
how do we resolve that? I mean, we've sold passes. I don't know,
Right.
for example, we let in 800 residents or non-residents, and the one person comes with a pass who expects to get in the pool.
Well, I mean, it's, the legal answer is easy. You just disclose that at the time the passes are purchased, subject to availability based on numbers. Practically speaking, that's not a very good answer.
No, people can be angry.
Is that our process? Is that part of what we've got in when we sold?
Well, I know for a fact that we say all our rules are subject to change. You know, whether we say your admittance may be limited based on, you know, certain factors, I don't think we say that.
And nobody reads it anyways, you know,
I read it. I do read it, and I'm a
Okay,
person.
comments,
These are,
excuse
yeah,
me,
it's
I'm
not for
sorry.
public discussion.
It's not for public discussion.
I'm wondering if we get ourselves in a situation where we have people asking for money back and how
Sure.
we, how
No, I
we
understand.
figure out what that
It's a
number is.
PR nightmare.
Or the potential of what that number is.
We don't wanna go
Or the
down that
legalities of what that
No.
is.
Well, one thing you could do if you wanted to refund money, admittances are tracked. We could apply a daily admission fee to the number of admissions that they had and refund the balance if that were,
Oh,
you
I
know,
see, yeah.
what we chose to do.
Well, why not, and I have a couple other questions, but why not just, limit the number of day pass
Yes.
holders to say 500 or
Well,
some other
Sure.
lower threshold in order to ensure we have capacity
For
for.
pass holders.
We can do that. I guess my concern was I didn't want to overly restrict residents. That's my
Sure.
other concern.
Yeah.
Not everybody has a pass, but they
Right.
should be able to go to the pool.
Right,
That was my logic.
Sure.
We should look at, just kind of the ratios, I mean, the daily ratios, what we're getting, and base the numbers off of that, and, and move it if need be, but it would be just try to figure, there's probably some ideas that like, hey, at 5 o'clock, we can probably predict this or that to a reasonable degree.
I mean, we'd probably have to base that ratio on like a full season since it varies every single day. We could
Yes,
run a
it
report.
does.
And break that down, to resident admissions or resident day passes.
I think I think we should understand the numbers of the past season or two in terms of passes and attendance. Presumably, we know how many people attend on a daily basis and whether they're pass holders or not, and that would give us some sense. If there's 200 pass holders, it's probably not gonna be an issue.
I mean, like I said, I think you have to aggregate that, into a season. I can't go day
Right.
by day. That
No,
would
yeah,
Be
I think it's a season, yeah. And
painful.
it's in the AR.
In the CAFR, we
Number of
have some,
attendees, yes,
some
they do have
attendance
it right
stats. I'm
there.
not
Yeah.
sure that's everything we need. We want to break it down, I think, by resident day passes, correct?
Sure.
But I,
Yeah.
So we're talking about, just so I'm clear, some limit to resident day passes, no non-resident day passes, and pass holders are the other group that would be
I think we
in,
should limit pass holders.
like unlimited on that.
Well, let's take a look at the numbers, but I think
Yeah.
it's also dependent on weather, right? I mean, obviously, if it's
Yeah.
a rainy day
I
and
mean,
it's cold, anybody wants to
Yeah.
come in, because practically nobody does come in.
Well, weather's a big deal, if, like, let's say you had 1,500 people
Right.
in a day. If they all get there and there's a thunderstorm at
Right.
3:30, we've probably successfully dealt with 1,500 people,
Mm-hmm.
but there's an asterisk because we didn't have to go to 7 PM. Like the filters still didn't have to make it to the end of the
Right,
day.
right.
So that's what I mean, where there's too many factors involved to draw a lot of conclusions. The only conclusion I can make is it's definitely correlated to the number of people.
Which makes sense. I think it's important, so the pass holders in my mind does not give any special status. They have the ability to buy a pass ahead of time at presumably some form of a discounted rate over a daily rate.
Depending on how many times you
Times you
attend,
use
yes.
it.
Um,
You use it.
Yeah, you gotta use it or it's.
Yeah, you use it, it's not. It's
Of course.
expensive.
Our residents pay taxes,
Right.
and the pool and the usage of the pool and the facilities are included in those taxes. So
Partially, because we have a fee, obviously.
yeah, no, of course, and it's reasonable that we would charge a fee for certain municipal things in conjunction with what is a fair market value, competitive with other things. We've all talked about that
Right.
before with other services, right? I'm not disputing that we charge a fee for some of what we do. I'm just saying we need to be careful about how we talk about limiting, because we don't want to be in a situation where we say, only if you've bought a pass, because we're excluding people who pay for that pool through their taxes, which is, our pool is billed as a community asset, it's held up as a community asset for all taxpayers, not just pass
Right.
payers who are buying ahead of time to get a discount, knowing that they're going to spend a lot of time at the pool.
See what you're saying?
No,
So I
understand.
think we need to be careful about that, number one, and how we decide
Yeah.
if we're going to decide to potentially restrict. The other question I have is, how does the restriction of people at the pool, if at all, affect renters of the pool, like organizations, the aquatics club, and other programs that are put on at the pool?
Well, I think with this model, we wouldn't be talking about restricting Aqua Club's attendance. The other user group is the extended day summer fun program.
Yeah.
They bring a lot of people and they bring them all at once. I think we should have a conversation about that. Some of them are pass holders and
Sure.
I don't know if it's all, but certainly
The vast
predominantly
majority are Mount
resident.
Lebanon residents, that's right.
So, I mean, I wasn't going there. But, you know, we can look at their numbers and include that in the data.
Do you feel like the non-resident admittance, do you think that that would be sufficient to alleviate this problem? Do you have any ballpark idea?
Oh, to say no non-resident?
Yeah.
You mean unless they're a pass holder, right? We don't have a ton of non-resident pass holders.
Okay.
I do feel comfortable saying that.
Do you think that that?
Primarily lap swimmers would be the biggest
Right.
segment of non-residents, and that's,
Do you
Yeah,
think there's
that's-
enough non-residents that come to the pool that would be?
I would say probably yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Saturdays and
we
Sundays.
see
et
many,
cetera.
many people who,
Right,
you know, aren't ordinarily at the pool on a 90-degree day in the summer
Yeah.
that, you know, we'll probably never see again.
Right.
So
Explain to me the downside then
Well-
to going that route.
I will say that I have never had a problem with non-residents using our pool as well, because they pay a fee to get in.
Sure.
And part of it is my feeling that for years I worked in the city of Pittsburgh, where I paid $52 a year to support the police and the fire and the EMT and all the other stuff, because that was the way the tax structure was set up. And for a while, the city could not afford to open pools. I think that may still be some of it. And this is just me personally, but my personal thing always was, wasn't it nice that on a Saturday or Sunday, I would see families that I presume came from the city, I'm making assumptions,
Right.
that we were able to allow that and have, you know, space for other people as well. But that's a personal opinion, totally. But I understand the filtration issue. But I don't think it's a negative thing that we welcome other people into our community when we can do it.
Certainly don't feel it's
Yeah.
negative, but I can
I get what you're
understand
saying.
that if we have to
Right,
restrict people, I certainly
Right.
would rather it be
Right.
non-residents versus residents.
well, sure, because of the tax issues. Got it.
Can I ask,
Yeah.
from a purely financial perspective, restricting, you know, non-residents, what's the potential financial impact? That's one question, and I know that probably takes a little digging. The other question is you talk about a new filtration system. What's that number?
$250,000. He already
Yeah.
gave it to us.
the ballpark is 250K,
50,000.
but I mean, we definitely need to research that a little bit more.
Sure.
You know, I did get some numbers. I'm talking with design professionals about, you know, is this a project you could take on?
Mhm.
What do you think the cost would be? You know, could you do it between September and April? I mean, I'm talking to people now to try to figure something out.
Sure.
And the aluminum floor?
I mean, okay, so
The whole thing.
it, I think if we go that far, you're also talking about a gutter system that was not well designed. All the return piping was put inside the gutter system. So 4-inch PVC pipe taking up maybe I don't know, an 8-inch space that's on the open end, it tapers.
Okay.
You've taken away a ton of gutter capacity. So that was a mistake. If you do a concrete floor, there's another huge expense. I mean, at some point, you're starting to say we should design a new pool. You know, bathhouse is fine. You could, you know, leave the zero beach untouched. The walls are fine. Floor, gutters, filtration, surge tank. You're getting into some very big numbers. I don't like our gutters. I don't like our floor. I'm trying to give you the most bang for your buck to get people back in the water. But all those things are deficiencies in our current pool.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate, right, there's the tactical, how are we gonna do this now?
Right.
But then there's how do we sustain this?
Right.
Right, and if we're 10 years into this system, right, and we have as I just alluded to before, a Main Parks master plan, discussions about a new building. All these pieces are, you know, maybe it's time to have a deeper conversation about what we're doing. And recognizing that that's maybe for the fall. But I would rather be having this conversation, understanding that it's getting hotter, more people are going to the pool. You know, there's a revenue stream associated with that that should sustain that thing, or the bulk of it, not totally. But if I'm gonna start restricting, that's going to start putting pressure on, you know, more tax supporting this. So long-term, where are we going? And how do we understand this collectively? Because at some point I need to think about this
Right.
in that way.
Yeah, I think just on those lines, along the lines of what we did with the field study and understanding the clubs and the organizations and just the municipal usage of the fields, the utilization of the fields, and recommendations to be made on how do we make more time at our fields. Recommendations like we got in that report, add lights, that gives us 100 more hours, add new fields in a potential area, that gives us another 1,000 hours. Understanding with some of these recommendations, what we can do. Obviously, some of them are financial, some of them are gonna be longer than others. We're talking about potential other capital items that we do every year anyway.
Right.
Do we include this in that? Does this get included in a future budget statement? I think we should bring stakeholders to the table and discuss it.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap us up. I'm really worried about doing the police chief thing, but we just need next steps.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna get.
No problem. Next steps.
So if, understanding what I heard tonight during the discussion, we need some additional information from David about past holders, numbers, what that actually looks like. So if we put certain restrictions in place, what the potential impacts are.
Exactly.
We
I
also,
think we need financial impacts, short-term, like Andrew's talking about. I think we need some statement about potential legal impacts related to finance or legal issues that could arise. I
Correct.
think we need those two things.
yeah, we need the numbers first so that we can work to those two things.
And I think we need a clear recommendation of what the restrictions are, because we've had a couple options.
Correct. Then we also have the issue of the filtration system and the timing, right?
Yeah, because that's,
Because if we wait to go through the budget process through the filtration system,
it won't get
we
done.
run the risk of not having it done for next year, and we're gonna be here, sitting here in that same situation.
Mhm.
So again, not to give David one more thing, but we need additional information there so that we can provide that information to the commission.
Filtration system and potentially pool bottom.
I was getting to the pool bottom, because David had indicated that we had Chester pools coming out in the spring to inspect and repair those defects. I would imagine before the repair authorizations issued, they'd give you a number for what it's going to cost to
Mhm.
do that. Is there any way to have Chester come out before spring of next year to take a look at that, so we can have all of the information to make a comprehensive decision about where are we making the investment? Is it floor, gutter, and whatever else, plus filtration? Is it just filtration? And what does that look like in terms of, I'll say, long-term operation of the pool?
Well, just to clarify, we've tried to get Chester out here sooner than this. This is coming out this fall to give us a number for
Yeah.
spring was the best we could do. And to be clear, all I would want from Chester is cut and weld the floor.
Right.
I would not ask Chester to weigh in on gutters or
Okay.
pull like a permanent replacement to the floor unless it were in conjunction with a design professional who just needed input on the structural integrity of the existing
Got it.
walls or something like that. I'm looking for someone different than Chester Pools to design whatever we want to
And I
design.
think we need that number too, to compare the cost of the repair
Yeah,
versus the.
That-
so that's a number I will try to get from design professionals separate from
Okay.
Chester.
Good.
One other question about club. One of the comments that club leaders have made to me is just related to communication of when things happen, which we can't foresee sometimes. You mentioned like cloudiness in the pool. Communicating how we need to shift times or programs or restrict programs and get people in to clean the pool. Is it possible to come up with some sort of process or understanding that if in the future either before or during the changes that we make. If we continue to see problems with cloudiness in the pool, or the pool needs to be shut down, other than for emergency, lightning, it is what it is, you have to shut the pool down, everyone knows that. But if there are issues with cloudiness in the pool, what I think jams up the club is when they get a call and say, hey, we have to shut down for this day. It's tough when that happens very quickly. And I understand sometimes it can't be helped, but is there a way that we can understand if this happens in the future, we would likely ask these groups to do X or these groups to do Y, or we would likely restrict Friday practice first and I forget the name of the
Master
daycare group.
or, extended day.
You know, we would go to them first, or we would go to them second. Is there some way to document what the process would be for how we think about how we shut things down so that these clubs and organizations can properly plan for that and communicate with their members what that might be?
I mean, we're happy to communicate with the Aqua Club and other groups in any way that's helpful and productive. As an example, when, you know, we wanted to add the 1 day of vacuuming, that's something that I notified them about at least last year, if not earlier. We revisited that again this year. They resisted, so we compromised and did something different on Friday. When we closed the pool on the June 13th, I notified them within a day or two that the following week on Wednesday, we would need that day to react. Our goal is to never have to restrict Aqua Club's use of the pool. I mean, that's the goal. When things arise, we do our best. And I do want to point out one other thing. When we had to close for cloudy water on May 27th, I just want to make sure everybody's clear on this. This was independent of any high temperatures or high bather loads. This was an operator error when they backwashed the pool.
Right.
They sent
Right.
some large amount of DE. We use 150 pounds to backwash. Some of it probably ended up on the elements. Maybe half of it or maybe more of it went right back into the pool. That's something we could never predict. It's never happened. I've been here, this is.
You're saying it shouldn't
Coming on
happen and
18
it
years.
likely won't happen.
It shouldn't have happened. It's never happened before, and I sure hope it never happens again. So we lost a partial day on a whole day on the 27th, a partial day on the 28th. We also had the shutdown on June 1st, which I think was partially due to residual DE from what happened on the 27th. We've closed partially or fully a total of 5 days. Up to 3 of them can be attributed to a mistake that happened
Right.
on Memorial Day or the night before. So just so you're clear, like there's no predicting that, like that was a fluke. So the rest of them, you know, are as I described, just completely related to the number of people.
Thank you, David.
Okay,
We do appreciate it.
well, thank you. I appreciate your support.
I don't want to rush you, but I have to decide the police chief vehicle.
I know what I
We
need.
Okay.
do, yeah,
We're all set?
we have it on the agenda for decision tonight. In the interest of time, I did provide the commission with
Yes.
a background memo,
Right.
basically just to cover the process that we're going
Right.
through. So you have that. I'm going to, if the commission doesn't have any questions on that method, I'm going to yield my time that I was going to spend covering that to Chief Haberman and Deputy Chief Chufy so that they can go through the actual vehicles themselves. That's
Great.
probably more important to the commission.
Good deal, Madam President, Commission, thank you very much. As you see from the manager's, overall background and how we got to this point, we obviously want to evaluate EVs as we go through our process of purchasing.
Right.
We've learned a lot over the last few weeks, months, as we go through this evaluation process. I will tell you that, you know, EVs are looking to be a viable option in various capacities within the police department. Our fleet currently exists of 29 vehicles, various uses, some specialties, some that could never be transferred to EV, and some that could be in various capacities in the future. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. You have in front of you the overall recommendations. Obviously, the ICE, the internal combustion engine, is a known entity. We understand the limitations, we understand its capabilities, the downtime. Obviously, the limitations that exist with the EV overall capacity to charge. The infrastructure is currently not in place. If we were to get this approved today, we would have this vehicle on the ground potentially in weeks. It wouldn't be months, it would be likely weeks. Having said that, we would have to outfit, again, not only my home with a charger, but there would be no alternative charging option from a continuity standpoint. I know that charging is something that was presented to the commission a couple of weeks ago, and I know that that infrastructure is planned to be in place. From a standpoint of continuity of operations, should we have a weather event, a tornado, an emergency, a sustained event, I don't want the charging of my vehicle to be a problem or a hindrance. I want it to be part of the solution. So at the end of the day, we're finding more and more every day about these things. We're finding they're very impressive from a use standpoint. We will say that. We had one in the other day, that Chevy Blazer you're looking at, we had it in. It's an impressive unit in terms of what it can do and what its capabilities are. We're very impressed by it. And again, what we're finding is each of these manufacturers, whether it's Tesla, whether it's Chevrolet, whether it's Ford, they all have their own thing within their vehicles. From a charging standpoint, Tesla has their, what they call their rapid charger, which is proprietary and not able to be used by other entities. However, we are confident that other manufacturers will also jump into that pool somehow. So we're learning more. I will say that we're on the edge of it from a fleet perspective. We're a little early. We think that out of the 29 vehicles we have, we think that 6 to 8 could be transferred overall from the EV capacity standpoint. We've done a real deep dive on this, and we think that that would be from a continuity standpoint when it's there, when the infrastructure is there.
Those are administrative vehicles, not pursuit vehicles.
Administrative vehicles, watch commander vehicle, investigative services unit, and community outreach.
Do we have follow-up yet? So the last meeting, we talked about getting follow-up on the 22 of 29, that Duquesne Light or.
We don't have the follow-up information back from Duquesne Light yet. Greg Wharton did reach out to them last week. They said it should be coming over shortly, but we don't have it yet. Once we get it, I'd like to have that consultant sit down and meet with the individual department head, staff office chiefs, so that they fully understand how each one of those vehicles is used, so that we can further refine that information.
Did that not happen already? Like, how would they make a recommendation of 22 out of 20?
What we provided to them was a spreadsheet based on Greg's, I'll say, reach out to those department head, staff office chiefs for some certain basic information that Duquesne Light requested, right? So that's what we provided to them. They came back with that preliminary initial report. Now we are giving them some additional data that they requested. They'll come back with, I'll say, refined report. And at which time, I just want to make sure that the end users, Craig, have a voice in the process so that everybody fully understands how the vehicles are used, what the needs are for the different vehicles. One of the things that we talked about with the Chevy EV is the upfitting, right? We really don't know, for a traditional internal combustion engine, we know what the upfitting looks like. I don't know if that's the same for an EV. I know the chief had tried to reach out to our upfitter to try to get some additional information. I don't know if we got that. I'd also like the Financial Advisory Board and, quite honestly, the Resiliency Board, both to take a look at the information, the Financial Advisory Board, so that we can make a determination about total cost of ownership for these vehicles. We've talked about that before.
And I agree with all those things. I think those are good to do. I mean, I run simple web searches on police departments using EVs. And it's like almost unlimited amount of information, like you can get a whole, I mean, have we called those
Yeah,
organizations?
and I'll speak to that, sir. So what you find is a lot of Tesla Y model vehicles are being utilized by a lot of police departments.
Yeah, I've seen Teslas, Mustangs,
Yeah,
like you're
yeah,
saying.
well,
there's-
Well, the Mustang, to be fair, is utilized right now by the New York City Police Department. They've got 38,000 police officers and 10,000 vehicles. So they can afford to have a fleet of 100 of those to get to and from a place from 8 to 4 in the afternoon and not be a 24/7 vehicle. Okay, so the limitations we have as a 24/7 vehicle are different than the pilot program that some of these departments are entering in. The sheriff's department of Allegheny County got one Tesla that run from 8 AM till 4 PM. It's not a 24-hour vehicle. There's Forest Hill Police Department got one Ford Lightning, mixed reviews. Intermittent electrical issues. Carnegie Mellon Police Department ordered one Ford Lightning in October. They still don't have it because of intermittent electrical issues. It's sitting on a lot because they can't figure out why the headlights aren't working. So we're finding out that right now it's very early in this process in terms of what people are commenting, what they're advertising, what we're actually getting.
Right.
And so that's really, so yeah, so
But we don't have a charger, am I right? Am I missing something? We don't have a
I don't think we
charger.
have it at the municipal lot. I mean, at the least.
we don't have.
We have public ones, but not at the police
We do not.
station.
We do not.
No,
Okay.
the
I just
hybrid
wanna
doesn't
make sure I
necessarily
have
need
that.
a charger though, correct?
What's that?
The hybrid
Hybrid?
doesn't necessarily need a charger though, correct?
Hybrid, no, it needs the 110.
Oh, that one, that's one.
I have that car.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It needs the 110 out.
Okay.
That's all that needs, but it takes 11 hours for it. to fully
I thought they
run.
gave,
Yeah.
I mean, look.
I thought they kind of were,
They don't.
On
They
and
say they
off.
do, but they really.
okay.
We were talking about this before. We've talked about it a million times. If what was missing from memos or the commentary that Chief just gave about the background and the conversations that you've had, that's the kind of information I'm looking for.
Sure.
Separately, and I've had this conversation with other commissioners, if it's not the right time for some of this stuff based on these experiences, it comes down to whether or not we want to do a pilot program. It sounds like we probably don't, based on the chief's experience talking to other people. I think some of what we have seen in memos has been probably overstated or even oversimplified in some cases. It's about the will to do this. It doesn't take a lot to put a charger in. It takes money and a little bit of time. It doesn't take 8 months to put a charger in. If we want to spend the money, whatever it is, 5,000 or 10,000, we can do it. I'm not saying that we should, but I'm saying that I think we should couch it in that way. I'm hearing the chief, I think, pretty clearly now, clearly than I've heard him in the past about the issues with some of these things. So, that's what I'm saying.
Andrew?
One thing for me, this is a tactical decision, and I'm more concerned about kind of the long-term strategic shift that we're on this journey on, and I have full faith that staff are working on that diligently, and doing it in a logical way. One thing you raised was, the need to have these cars available, right, in emergencies, right, if power goes out. Which prompts a question. As we have as we start making a shift to some of the fleet being electric and needing emergency vehicles that are electric and having power outages go down, as we're thinking about chargers, do we also need to be thinking about battery banks?
Well,
Yeah, I mean, we talked about, actually, we talked, we had a preliminary meeting, the manager, myself, and Greg Wharton about, can a charger be hooked up to a generator? And the question needs to be answered, because we need that capacity
Sure,
to run something, should that occur.
sure.
I mean, we just went through a heat weather event.
Mhm,
In other states, during heat weather events, they limit the amount of electricity you can use.
mhm.
And so what we're finding is there are limitations on these things in certain emergency situations. So what we don't want to do is go down this road where we want to even pilot this without really the safeguards in place to have a continuity of operation.
Mhm.
And that is really my fear. And I
Sure.
wholeheartedly embrace the technology. I wholeheartedly embrace what their tools can offer, what direction it's going. They seem to all be on top of it. They seem to all be addressing our concerns. We have a lieutenant right now at a fleet show. He literally sent us a picture today in the Chevy Blazer Police Edition.
Mhm.
And we're really working hard to get the right information and get back. And we are going to recommend an actual program to move forward.
I don't feel like I need this today, but I think we need it soon. We've talked about
Right.
this. We've talked about this from things that need to be provided and stuff that we want to see. We've talked about potential to add charging stations at different locations like the library and the public
Right.
safety center and parking lots and academy lots. We've had conversations about specifically police vehicles. The fire chief has come in and talked about, hey, they've got this really cool, $1.7 million fire engine that we could get that's all electric. And it feels very fragmented. I know you're working on this overall, so I'm not saying we need this now. But what would be great to have is to understand that across the board, but not from an area of, these are the reasons why we can't do it, but from the area of, if we wanted to, continuity of operations, how do we define that? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we need to have a vehicle ready to go. What do we need to do to make that happen the way we want to operate our municipality? That's what I'm hoping we get out of whatever report you're putting together.
Fair enough.
And we are working to do that. We're also at the same time trying to gather information. You saw in your packet that the fire department has I'll say a fleet replacement schedule.
Yes,
I think we need to have that for all of our department staff offices so that not only do we understand which vehicles it's possible to move in the direction of electric, but what does that look like from I'll say fleet replacement standpoint, right?
Yes.
So how are we most prudently spending those dollars at the right time as those vehicles are due to transition out of rotation?
Yeah, that's helpful to have. I mean, I know we look at this on a day-to-day or month-to-month or year-to-year as it relates to the budget or when it comes up, but we talked about that as something that it would be a tool to help commissioners plan too.
Well, I wish we were getting you a Cybertruck, because that would be ridiculous. But I feel like we have enough information on this topic.
and you are recommending
I would say the Dodge Durango is the best option.
for you at this point. Thank you. I
Thank you.
really appreciate all the work.
Thank you all very much.
Goes into
Appreciate it. We'll
Very
keep working forward to it for you.
Well, you're out of time. You need anything?
30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds.
I sent a memo. Does anybody have any questions?
What are we talking about?
The active transportation
Active
plan,
transportation plan, if you read the memo.
sort of the next steps.
It assigns, Andrew, the job of the commission, recommends.
Yes.
But I already asked Andrew if he'd do it, and he said yes. So it looks as if Andrew would be the commission champion for it.
Yeah,
You
that's
okay
fine.
with that? Everybody's
Yeah.
all right with that? Nobody wants that assignment?
No.
But I do want to talk to you because I did have conversations with residents in the fourth ward about, one-way streets and sidewalks and things like that, which I
Sure.
think are going to be real options that will also mitigate cost in some of those safe walking routes.
Yes,
So I think we should
Great.
have that
Yeah.
conversation.
Yep.
And I think residents are much more amenable to it than they may have previously been.
sure.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Great.
Good job, Ian. That was.
And I do
Of course you can.
one last, in terms of, we had a request from the Parks and Rec Advisory Board to move their meeting time from 6 PM to 7 PM. That would take it out of sync with the other boards. Not that that matters, that's just information for you. We will also require us to run a new legal ad, again, just information. It's not like the cost is anything significant. But I just needed to get a sense from the commission if there's anybody that has any issues. Like Craig's already weighed in, said he's fine.
I missed the last meeting, but I don't have any issue.
Absolutely not.
Future meeting.
This is preposterous.
You
Nonsense.
just volunteered to be there.
No.
Parks and Recreation guy. Boom.
The one thing I do just want to highlight
Yeah.
is that we,
Yes.
as a community, last night received
The
this
town?
award, county award.
Tell us
from
where
the
you were.
Pennsylvania Downtown Association.
Yeah,
downtown.
it's the Main Street
Yeah.
Association for the state. Andrew and I were there in downtown York, Pennsylvania.
Yes, and it was fantastic. We were recognized for the Vibrant Uptown Streetscape project, so 2.5 years of blood, sweat,
neat.
tears.
It's all
For
worth it.
everybody involved, it is all worth it now because we got this award. Recognized at the state level, and it really was. They were very complimentary of the project Yeah, all around and the work that went into it. So kudos to staff. This will sit somewhere in prominence in Eric Milliron's office.
When you first mentioned it, I thought you said you went to New York and I was like.
No,
Yeah,
New York.
yeah,
No, York,
York.
Pennsylvania.
old York.
It's Old York. It has wonderful architecture, but time has passed it by. It's got some real economic issues, shall we say. So, yeah. All right. We have a meeting, that started a minute ago.
All right.
Who's running it?
Yeah.